How to be non-judgmental. Now, in this video, I'm going to share with you a very simple way that you can separate your judgments and notice them and catch them. And I was asked by a good friend of mine recently whether it is in human nature to be judgmental. And it's a really good question because I think the answer is yes and no. To an extent, we all possess the ability to judge, assess, and be prejudiced. I think we all of us have within us a degree of prejudice and judgment because it forms part of our survival instincts. You know, as a species, we are have to be attuned at surveying our environment and the people in our environment. Do people have good intentions? Do people have bad intentions? It's part of our survival instincts. But as with anything in society, while we have that capability within us to judge, is it in our nature to be judgmental? I don't think so, not to the extent that we're seeing in society, not to the extent that you start talking about people behind their back, gossiping about people, being curious about people's lives that don't add any benefit to your own. I think there's a very fine line. It's important to, judge people's character, particularly when it comes to your own safety and well-being and preserving your life and what you have built around you. But it can very easily be pushed over the edge. And I think what we pick up as we're young, what we pick up from our parents and the people around us, how they talk about others, how they judge others, the prejudices they have, the kind of prejudice in society, the stereotypes in society, we pick these up. So, most I think of how the way we judge people is learned, and we pick it up from society because the people we're with and society influence us. The media influences us, what they share, how they speak about people, how they speak about groups, how they speak about events influences the way we think. So in order to determine how it is we truly think and feel, we need to separate out sometimes what people are saying, what society is saying, what the narrative is saying, and just focus on what is it I really believe. And then based on that belief, you can then start to look for evidence or start reading about it or reading about theories that support that, maybe theories that go against that. So you can become well informed, well read, and have more of a balanced view. And then your own opinion and judgments will refine and they will take shape over time. But it's very easy in our society just to go with and conform with the majority, even if it doesn't align with how we feel. We all have, to a degree, I think, a moral code. We pretty much, most of us, recognize what is universally right, what is universally wrong, what is universally good and bad is tied into a moral code. So, for example, have money and you're able to buy food for yourself, to therefore give money or buy food for those who can't afford it or who are starving. That's considered the right thing to do universally. And the flip side of that, bringing harm to someone else or stealing from another person, that's considered universally the wrong thing to do. So these basic fundamental tenets of what's right and wrong that are universally accepted. And I think within that morality, within that moral code, there's that kind of fundamental respect for human life and for others that I think needs to be respected. Beyond that, now you're getting into societal constructs. Now you're getting into what society deems as right or wrong. That very quickly goes into judgment, being judgmental, categorizing things as right or wrong when in fact, by its very nature, it's not right or wrong. This is why, to a degree, we have to be judgmental, but we can very easily take it over the edge. So a good example is if you gossip. If you gossip, it's not necessary, distracts from your own life. You start really focusing on the external. And this is the point. You start really focusing on the external world. This person did this person did that, is right or wrong. And you get distracted away from how you feel, what's going on for you, what thoughts you're having. It takes away from self-awareness. It's like debits from self-awareness. So that's why being judgmental is useful for our survival to an extent. But most of what we do in society when it comes to judging does not help us. In fact, I think it harms us because it takes us out of our own world and out of our own life when we start criticizing and judging others. I'm going to share with you now the key steps where you can not be judgmental. And when I say that, you don't show judgment. All right. Step one, write down your judgments. Think of anything you're judgmental about. Write down a list of your key top judgments. Now, it could be how you judge yourself, how you judge others, your environment, circumstances, the situations you're in. And you can even ask a trusted friend or loved one to help you with this, because they may well pick up on kind of things you say or judgments you have that maybe you're not aware of. So write that down, and by taking that first step, you are addressing self-awareness. You are building in self-awareness, which is in my opinion, as a counselor, and I've seen this and I've experienced this, self-awareness is the first step for making any positive personal change in your life. So write it down. Be open to it. Now, the second step, once you've written that down, is to try to, as best as you can, to assess where the judgments come from. Why do you hold that particular judgment and not another judgment? What is it about the thought you have, or this judgment that you have, that you believe in? Where did it come from? Who influenced you to think that way? Did you pick it up from your environment, or is it something you really believe in? And again, just because you think you believe in it doesn't necessarily mean it came from you. Maybe it came from just earlier experiences that you've heard time and time again, and it's kind of been ingrained, but it didn't originally come from you. So really, for each judgment, break it down. Why do I have this judgment? Like, it's a fair question. Why? Just because I feel that I believe in that, but why don't I feel I believe in the opposite statement? What is it about this judgment that I believe in? So you have your list. You've tried your best to assess why I have this judgment, where the judgment is coming from. And now the next step is to kind of add to that by asking yourself, do you consciously judge, or does it feel automatic? Like, if you're in that situation or if you're with that person, do you find yourself automatically judging them or judging that situation? Is it like semi-conscious? Is it like semi-automatic where it just comes in? Or do you purposefully bring that judgment in and are very aware you're judging? So you start to really break down the mechanics of the judgment, where it comes from, why you judge, why you believe in that judgment, and how it comes about. Do you consciously, when you're with that person, think of the judgment, or does it seem to automatically come out? You might even be in situations where you share your thoughts, you share your judgment, and then later you'll be like, oh, shouldn't have said that. So again, how conscious are you of these judgments you're having? And the way to start to counteract being judgmental is to become an observer. An observer observes their environment. There is no right, there is no wrong, there is no good, there is no bad. There is no judgment. There is no opinion. It is pure observation. It's just observing what you see. Now, typically what happens is we observe, we evaluate, and then we conclude. The evaluation is where the judgment comes in. So the evaluation is you assessing the information. That's where the judgment is born. So the mother gives the child ice cream. So that's an observation. Now, the evaluation is taking meaning from what we've seen, interpreting what we've seen. So it could be like, the mother has carelessly given that child the ice cream, and this ice cream is full of sugar. Okay. And now you have the conclusion, which is this mother must not care about her child because she's just carelessly given that child an ice cream, which is not going to be good for his health. So this mother does not care. So that's a bit of a weird example, but it's just to show you how very easily you can judge someone based on an act. And we make inferences about people, and we try to make a judgment of character. It's almost we have to step in ourselves to say, wait a minute, you don't know this person. You are just assuming this, but you're assuming it based on one act you've seen, one act of which is your interpretation, but it could be completely different from reality. You went from observing a mother giving her child ice cream to determining the mother doesn't care about her child. So while that's a bit of an extreme example, it shows you just how quickly our judgments can jump from what's really happening. So this step is where, if you normally observe and you make a judgment and it feels automatic, just observe. When you have the judgment come in, notice it and label it as a judgment. Say you are a judgment. So it could be like, the mother should never do that. Or, this person always does this. Or my boss always interrupts me. Okay, these are judgments because now you're assigning a label to it. They should do that. They should not do this. He always does this. These are judgments. Another good example is if you're at work and let's say you're sharing an idea with your boss, but they forget the idea you've told them. You've told them the idea before. It's very easy to say, my boss doesn't care about my ideas. Okay. But in reality, you'd be like, well, I've shared my idea once before and I'm now saying it again and he hasn't remembered the idea I told him. But it's easy for us to jump, oh, he doesn't care, he's taking advantage of me. These are when the judgments start coming in. And the judgments are born out of an evaluation. So the way we evaluate our observation, that's where the judgments are born. So next time you find yourself in a situation where you judge and you want to not be judgmental, you're still going to be judgmental, all right? But the difference is this exercise helps you to identify when you're being judgmental. And when you identify it, the conscious you knows, hey, I'm being judgmental, and then can choose what to do with it. You might still decide to share it, in which case it's going to be now a conscious act. Or you decide, this is a judgment, I don't think I'll share it. Let me try and change my perspective. Maybe it's a bit harsh or not correct. My judgment may not be correct. Is it more useful to share my judgment, or is it more useful just to share directly what I observed? Especially if it's something that concerns me. So, I noticed that you've forgotten the idea I told you, but I did tell you this last time, and I just wanted to know whether you thought it was a good idea. So you're using non-violent communication, you're using a clear way to communicate what you're observing while stripping away the judgment. So this exercise is writing down all your judgments as best as you can, assess where the judgment is coming from, why you judge, why you believe in that particular judgment, and then shift from judging to observing. So the first step is we observe our environment, we observe what people say, we observe how people act. Observe. Once you observe, that's going to trigger a series of judgments to come in, inferences about people. And like I said before, these judgments are crucial for our survival, but there's a very fine line. It can very easily tip over that into gossip and presuming and prejudice, stereotype, all of these things. So just observe what's happening. And when that judgment forms in your mind, try and catch yourself and label it a judgment. And it may not be based on what you're really observing, what's really happening in the situation. If there's something that concerns you, and there's a particular judgment that you have that really concerns you, you're better off wording and communicating it to the person who's concerning you, but in a non-violent way, purely by stating what you've observed. So do not share your judgment, but instead share what you've observed and what is concerning you about what you've observed. That way you're giving the opportunity for someone to respond to you directly, openly, will not become defensive because you haven't shared the judgment. You're just sharing what you observed. So they'll openly share with you without becoming defensive and be able to clarify your concerns. And even if they become defensive, you know that because you have not shared that judgment, because you've acted and communicated your thoughts directly, that any confrontation from their side, it's on them. That's their responsibility. It's not yours. Another thing I want to leave you with in this video is to, in this exercise, let go of your notion of what's right, wrong, good or bad. Let go of that. This is just about observing. There's no judgments. There's no assignments of guilt. There's no categorization of what's good, right, wrong, whatever. This is just about observing. Once you develop that skill and practice that skill, you will be better able to separate your judgments and identify your judgments. And in the longer run, you can have the opportunity to be non-judgmental in situations where you feel it would benefit you. I'm going to be sharing a video soon that is going to help you to deconstruct your observations and your evaluations, and you can find out how you can separate judgment from what you see, and that's going to impact the way you communicate what you see and how you feel, and that in turn is going to impact how people communicate with you and treat you. Thanks for watching.